This podcast is part of the Treksphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit Treksphere.com. I was reaching into the dryer, and apparently the door had been left ajar for far too long because I tapped my thumb on the light, and this was about 10 days ago, and I have a burn. I don't know what degree because it was small enough that I wasn't worried about it, but it's actually about the size of half a penny. Ish, so it's noticeable and it's kind of big. Have you ever had a burn?
Yeah, I've been burned in my
okay. It itches like crazy. So I put some ointment on it and I keep a Band-Aid on it so I can rub it and satisfy that itch. But there was it always starts itching at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and it wakes me up, and all I want to do is scratch it. And like within a couple days of the burn and it was healing, I was not paying attention, and I straight up just scratched right on it, and I dug deep. Yeah.
Was it worth it? I learned my lesson baking that you should always wear long sleeve shirts when doing a lot of baking during the day.
Oil or what?
No, just hot things that are hot, because the oven is like 500 degrees, and even just touching it,
Yeah. Instant burn.
As you know, yeah.
Yep.
This is Measure of an Episode.
We'll just start there. Where does our continuing mission? Yeah.
To explore? What makes
a Star Trek episode a proper Star Trek episode, and not just good or bad TV.
Right.
TV. Oh my gosh. What if we started doing that?
We would lose all the listeners.
Not that, but depending on which series we watched, as you know, this is the measure of an episode.
Oh, and this was such a good one that he did that.
Right.
When he gets all like cranky.
Yeah.
When the admiral starts saying, "What are you doing?"
Right.
Like, you're just staring at the piece of thing. It's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's all right. Let's just calm down, Sisko.
Are we starting the episode, or are we?
Yeah. And this week we watched DS9.
What do we do with the criteria?
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
This is a crazy day. Okay. DS9, Season 5, Episode 10, Rapture. And the blurb is, when Sisko sees a painting depicting Valhalla, which I kept hearing as Valhalla.
Right.
Which must be the same. Must be where they got it from. Bajor's legendary lost city. He is inspired to search for the famed site.
And I mean, that's...
I would say sacred site. I would not say fame.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah. And again, not so much because what happens in the cold open is definitely what happens in the entire episode. I mean, that's what he does. I think that the only thing that they could have added was much to the distress of Starfleet or his family or something like that. This is somebody who does not care about DS9 and really wasn't paying attention, because in the cold open, Kira was even talking about how it was a sacred city. It was essentially Babylon, where everyone was living together peacefully, and they wanted to, I forget if they said why it was destroyed or buried or hidden or whatever. It's kind of Babylon and Eden combined, basically.
The criteria by which we judge these episodes: number 1, is there science fiction inherent to the plot? Is there science fiction explored in the plot? Number 2, is that science fiction unique or novel in some way? And number 3, is there an ethical or moral dilemma explored in the episode? And I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And this week we watched Rapture.
You can't.
I don't know how to do it any other way.
It's ingrained. Yeah, it's ingrained. So this whole episode, this epic episode, starts off with them looking at a picture. Them, I mean, Sisko, Kira, and Jadzia. We call her Zia.
Do they?
Short. Well, we do.
Oh, okay.
Well, we do now.
I call her JZD.
And she could not be less interested in this thing. She just does not care. It's like trying to explain the plot to Endgame to somebody who has never seen and doesn't care to see any of the Marvel movies. They just cannot get through the synopsis quick enough.
Right.
But she just doesn't care, and that never really comes back.
No, it doesn't, which, was kind of she should have come back for some comment later with Sisko being this concerned over a painting, and kind of have have her kind of be the voice of reason or rationality for him instead of having the admiral there.
Right, or have her come around on something.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, have her be the faith odometer, as it were. That doesn't work, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I think she just kind of disappears.
Yeah, she comes back later on where she's kind of trying to talk to Kira about how Sisko's going off the deep end, and Worf steps in to defend his religious journey because he went on one not too long ago, according to us.
Right. Worf has 2.5 lines in this episode.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, I've got some trivia about First Contact in this episode. Which
thank God.
I know you were hoping for it. Yeah. I mean, what do we want to say about this episode? Where are we going with this?
Oh, I thought you were going to give us the First Contact trivia.
Oh, okay. All right. I was just telling you that I have it, but I can bring it up now. It's fine.
I mean, is it related to this episode, or is it just First Contact trivia to distract us?
No, so First Contact, this is the first episode to air after First Contact. And people were actually hoping that there would be some kind of comments about First Contact because the Defiant was in First Contact. But I think it was Ira Stephen Bear. I don't remember if it was him or Brandon Braga, but one of them was irritated that the Defiant got so beat up in First Contact, and they kind of didn't want to acknowledge the way Defiant was handled in First Contact, and that's why they didn't make any references to it needing repairs or it coming back from the battle with the Borg or anything like that. The only references to it are this is the first time we're seeing the new uniform from First Contact that Sisko was wearing, the gray jacket with the
interesting
with the ranking underneath it.
Yeah.
And this episode and the next episode, Avery Brooks is actually wearing an outfit that wasn't designed for him, so it doesn't fit properly, and they weren't able to put the comm badge where it needed to be, so it sits in the gray for this episode and the one following this one, before he finally gets his own suited one and they're able to put it in the proper place.
Interesting. I will say they had a great opportunity, because in a plot line like First Contact, where they've time traveled back 100 years or whatever, however 200 years, however long they've time traveled back, and there are people from the future messing with the past to create an outcome. And after the Enterprise left that timeline, there would have been, obviously, no matter how much work they do to cover up the whole thing, there would have been leaks, there would have been rumors that would have perpetrated out throughout the entire planet. And there would have been this great kind of underground of, look, the future was here. This is why this happened. And there would have been this whole thing that would developed over the course of 200, 300 years.
Sure.
And when the Enterprise got back to the present, they could have settled all of these rumors. Yes, we went back, because at that point it doesn't matter. They're in the future. So they could have come back and basically settled what everybody is waiting for, like the flat earthers and everything. Like, yes, the earth is flat. That is true.
Right.
Or whatever other conspiracy that you can think of. What if somebody just showed up and been like, yes, that's true. Here's the proof. We were there. We did that. Mm-hmm. We just got back from doing that. They could have done that. They could have like, oh, all these rumors we had about First Contact are true. We know now.
Right. Yeah.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. I mean, so are you saying to actually make that a plot line, or just have Worf comment on it in some way?
Well, it would have been interesting if there was to have Sisko say, "Oh, all those rumors about Zefram Cochrane hanging out with some bald guy that is rumored to be Picard, and Picard has denied it up until this moment. But the reason he's denied it is because it hadn't happened to him yet, and he just got back, and he's like, yes, that was actually me. But we just did that, so I wasn't lying. It just happened to have happened for me just now.
Right.
So I am no longer denying it. Yes, that was me back then."
It's amazing how positions can change when new information is presented.
Sisko is very fixated and obsessed, you could say, about this painting of this spire, the Valhalla spire.
Yeah.
And we were given very little information and insight as to why this is super important, other than we think this is very important kind of speech. And maybe that's why Jadzia is standing in for the audience at this point, because she's like, okay, great. Yep.
Right. If you say
Got
so.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a painting.
So Yeah, it's nice painting. I like the painting. She even says something like that. It's like good shadowing, you know.
Right.
When is lunch?
Can I go? Or
Yeah,
are
that's
we-
lunch.
Wait, what, Odo? Sorry, guys. Odo's calling me.
What does she do on the ship? Does she have a job?
I honestly, I don't like. I know that Odo is chief of security, and Sisko is both commander and then captain. Like, that's
And emissary.
and emissary. Yep, yeah. It's not a Starfleet job though. But that's
does she
literally
do?
well. And Bashir's the doctor, and Quark is the bartender. But Dax, Worf, and Kira, I don't know their jobs.
I don't know their jobs either.
Yeah, cool.
Good talk. So Sisko becomes infatuated with this thing, and he starts investigating it on the holodeck. He lies down on the floor in really suggestive positions while he's looking at it. It's really weird. And then the holodeck almost kills Sisko,
Yeah.
and it gives him the superpower of the emissary.
Right.
And he's able to intuit and sometimes have visions of the future, of the past. Everything comes together, sort of a single theory of everything that he's able to do. The problem is it's very deleterious to his health, and there comes a point where he has to choose to maintain his connection to the spy or being the emissary,
Right, to the
or
prophet,
save
yep.
his life. And perhaps you could argue that the moral dilemma is that Jake has to decide to honor his father's wishes or to maintain his father as a life being.
Yeah.
And he chooses the latter. And that's the whole episode, everybody. But I do have one thing to say about this. I think that the Bajoran religion, I don't know if there's a word for it, because it is I think a worldwide religion.
Right. There's no different sects or anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think because the prophets are real things, it's not faith-based. So
Right.
I would argue it's not even a religion, it's a government.
I did realize that it is a little bit more of, I mean, I think that you're right in as far as because they do know that the prophets are real, that it's a little bit harder to argue that it's a religion. But they don't know what the prophets want. They know that the prophets are there, and they don't know if they join the prophets when they die. They know that the prophets are there, and they know that they can have visions through the orbs. But they have to try to interpret these visions, and they don't have direct conversations with the prophets to know, what each life is supposed to have, or what the purpose of everyone is.
We know the prophets exist, but it's very unclear how much information they've imparted through their emissary
Right.
or emissaries. And so is the existence of the prophets all we really know about the prophets in terms of what they want from their followers?
Yeah, pretty much actually. They, when they meet with Sisko every single time, they talk in riddles. So they do not provide any direct information as to what's going to happen or what someone needs to do.
So it's accurate to assume then that the Bajorans are creating a religion around a group of beings who have not really fully identified themselves or what they want.
Yes.
Okay, so it is a religion then.
Yeah.
In the same sense that if someone were to see a mountain that appeared to be glowing, or a bush that appeared to be burning, or those kinds of things, and people design faith around these phenomenon.
The biggest difference is that they know the source of their visions and their gods.
Right, but they have no information about them.
Right.
They themselves are with free will they are interpreting them on their own means, through their own means.
Yes.
So it's kind of still is a religion then, not a government.
Right.
Okay, I take that back then.
Well, see, I still agree with you, like to a certain extent, just because I would almost say it is more of a cult, because they have these leaders who are interpreting what's happening to their benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
That describes religion very well.
It's more of a primitive religion then, is what it would be, because like now people see things that are not signs or visions, and they are interpreting them to be signs or visions.
That's how it's always been.
But because these are things that they have from another source. This is like I wish I could remember which tribe it was, but there was a tribe where they built a they built a runway and they built a communications tower, and they have rituals that are representative of the Vietnam War, that directly reflects some country, because there was a country that flew into this area because it was a good place for reconnaissance, where there was this primitive tribe, and the primitive tribe watched them build a runway for their planes and have a communications tower and do all of these things. And they didn't understand the technology or what was happening. And when the war was over, everyone just left without explaining anything to this tribe. And so the tribe believed that they were these gods, and they are now emulating everything that they saw, but having no
veracity.
Sure, that's not the word that I'm looking for, but they're
evidence.
They're basically they're pretend playing, So
right, like, they're taking something they cannot explain and creating a narrative around it to explain it.
Right.
And I mean, that's religion, effectively.
For them, they have the source. We could explain to them what it was and how it worked. And I feel like for modern religion, we don't have that.
It's an answer to the unexplainable. And whether it's prophets in the sky or eclipses or droughts or anything like that, it's all the same thing. It's all unexplainable events that we have to know the reason for. We have to have some sort of control over, and creating a narrative creates control to some way. And I think that's what's happening with all religion. It's a lack of information. I was thinking to myself, there's been an issue. The prophets have sent commandments down to their people, and the people follow them, and that's a government, right? Because there's actual evidence that they have been passed down from these prophets. But you're saying that they haven't done that, and they always speak in riddles, and so we don't really know what the intentions are of these prophets. And so, I was wrong about that.
Right.
I kind of want it to be the other way around, though, where the prophets actually gave commandments down,
right?
And that was the religion, but it wasn't religion.
Well, so then but by that extent, then Christianity and Judaism, anything that has the commandments, that follows the commandments, would be a government, because they were given an edict.
Right, but it's unprovable and unfalsifiable that those commandments were written by God, whereas the prophets,
I see. Okay,
you know what I mean? Like, it's actually
if they knew that it actually came from the prophets and it wasn't just somebody saying here they were.
Right. The email metadata doesn't lie, is what I'm trying to say,
right.
They sent it from.
Yeah. They still have the subspace message, the original subspace message.
Yeah. Yeah. Microsoft Outlook never lies. Never breaks down. Netscape. Juno.com, at Juno.com, never like that, like a rock. Anyway, that's the whole episode, right? What I just described, because it's nothing happened. I mean, I'm going to assume that you don't find this to be a proper Star Trek episode.
It's not a proper Star Trek episode, but it is a very well written episode. I really liked all of the interactions that took place. The only person who felt a little out of place was the Admiral, and that was just because he was a new character. But I felt all of the dialogue was really good. I felt that the emotional impact was really good. For me, I would say that the ethical moral dilemma was kind of Sisko's position, because he was given this command by Picard, basically saying Bajor needs to become part of the Starfleet by any means necessary. And they're finally there, and Sisko has to decide whether he needs to follow Starfleet, where he is now fulfilling what his obligation was, or he needs to follow what the prophets are telling him, which is that they need to not sign on yet. So that's the moral dilemma. But I mean, regardless, there's not really any Star Trek in it. There's not really any. There's not really any sci-fi in it.
I agree.
I think it would have been neat if there had been a little bit more play with whether or not they were visions or it was brain damage.
Yeah, kind of there was a John Travolta movie called Phenomenon.
Yep.
And it could have had that outcome where we all think it's some sort of alien something or other, but it's just him having some sort of aneurysm. And What a disappointing ending to that movie, too.
Where he died? Spoiler
Yeah.
alert, I guess?
No, he just says, it's a brain tumor.
Oh.
As though brain tumors give people magical powers of thought.
See, and again, like, just to go down that road, like, it would have been neat if that was the scientific explanation for it. Like, that's what they were able to see. But, there was still the question of, like, was there a supernatural element to it?
And they kind of mislead us when he's, I guess, infected or altered or touched, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
When the flash of light, it does not look like he's having some sort of episode.
Right.
It looks like there's something happening to him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we were misled with that one.
Yeah. It felt, up until the very end, it felt like kind of a paranormal Flowers for Algernon, if you remember that story.
Never. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, we read it in 8th grade, I think. It was it's a story about a guy named Charlie who has who's mentally deficient, and it's written from his perspective. And they give him they give some medication to mice that help them with memory retention and cognitive skills, and they start to go through the mazes faster, and it's very successful. So they try it on Charlie, and it's cool because within a couple chapters, the writing gets better, his words get more.
Oh, I have read this. Yeah, and it starts out as a journal, and it's very basic, very low level writing, and then he slowly gets better and better, and then it gets worse and worse.
Well, yeah, he learns, like, the mice die, and so he learns that by taking this medication, he will die as well. And so he just kind of presents his final thoughts and his notes about what he discovered with this medication and learned and all that kind of thing.
But so another thing that happens that you could argue it makes it not Star Trek, because there's the most important element of his vision about Cardassia is that, because he envisions locusts in Cardassia, but he doesn't say fallopian locusts or Cardassian locusts. He just says locusts.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, oh, how refreshing.
Right.
I still know what he means, strangely.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up. That was a reference to an unproduced script. There was an episode where they were going to have some kind of space locusts attacking Bajor, and they had, like, the prophets had told them at some point that they shouldn't do anything. And Sisko, and so, like, the whole planet is not going to defend themselves because that's what the prophets said, or something like that. And Sisko was finally convinced them, as the emissary, that they would need to protect their crops and themselves from the locusts. And that was kind of going to be the end of it. That was as far as it got. But yeah, that was the callback to it.
But he just says locusts.
He just says locusts.
That was the most fun part.
Did you notice the Quark line, though, about root beer?
Well, I know that they said root beer, and he thinks that there's actually alcohol in root beer, I guess. Why did it kind of flew past me? I thought it was a reference to something I didn't know about.
It is. It's a reference to at least one episode, if not two, where they talk about how root beer is an earth drink, and there's no alcohol in it, and it's repulsively sweet, but after a while you enjoy it and want more.
I've always wanted to have unsweetened root beer.
Oh, I wonder what that's like.
Yeah, would it be anything?
Have you ever smelled the root of the tree that makes root beer?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have, or at least I've had other things that use the same spice or root or whatever it is.
Okay.
And it's always like, oh, this smells like root beer.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm sure it is not sweet, so I'm sure it's very bitter,
Right. Oh, can you imagine? Because it smells sweet.
Yeah.
It smells, because it smells like root beer. So that would be so weird to have something that smells like root beer but is actually bitter and not sweet. That would be such a strange experience.
Yeah, it's a lot like having a lotion that smells like delicious vanilla and squirting it into your mouth, thinking, oh, this is going to taste great.
I'm sure your friend did that.
I'm told that.
If you could absolutely, like, if you learned that there was no free will, by seeing the future, it could not be changed. Whatever you decide to do, you have already decided to do, even if your decision is to do nothing or to, like, destroy whatever happens. Somehow what you are trying to prevent, you will create. Would you want to know that future?
Probably not. But the way I looked at it when in these types of situations, a logical way around it is that at this moment, this is how the future will be. Mm-hmm. At this moment, according to all the information we have,
Right.
this is how everything will turn out. And because of chaos theory and everything, that vision or that premonition immediately evaporates or becomes less and less accurate.
Right.
Over time.
Yeah.
So that's better than just saying, oh, everything is locked in place and whatever you do, you cannot deviate from that line.
You're saying if you knew the end result and you could, and like that immediately starts to become faded because you start making actions because you now know what the end point could be. But I feel like you would have to know some of the courses that got you to that point because you don't know if whatever choices you're making, are you just making that even more inevitable or are you actually veering away from it?
Yeah, that's the Riker input. He makes this over the course of TNG several times where someone says, well, maybe we should drop out of warp and stay right here. And Riker will say something along the lines of, well, what if that's what we did before? And that's what leads us to our destruction. Mm. He says that many times. They always give that line to Riker. And
well, yeah, he does it in Times Arrow too.
Yeah, he'll say that quite a bit. He'll say it in Cause and Effect as well.
Right. That's interesting. I wonder how often that line comes up. Because I could see LaForge saying that too.
And I'm sure maybe he does. I just always remember Riker.
You remember Riker doing it, yeah.
Line. Yeah.
That'd be a fun little running gag if that does turn out to be the case.
Kind of like how they always give Worf the
we should
fire torpedoes.
Yeah.
Let's just say there's a standing order to fire torpedoes from me.
Right. I will be in my quarters.
Praying. Meditating.
Fantasizing about Kalis.
You can hear the fingers moving on that one.
Yeah.
Meditating.
He's starting to sound more and more like Dr. Evil.
Well, he was raised by humans.
By Russians.
Yeah.
I wonder if they ever... Well, whatever.
Not worth it.
It's quite an exhilarating sensation.
Right. We didn't talk at all about Bajorans being accepted into the Federation because who cares?
Well, because at the end they weren't. That's all.
Right.
By the end of this episode, nothing has changed. So, like, as great as an episode as this was, it genuinely was filler, other than it reaffirmed for the Bajor people that Sisko truly was the emissary. This is actually a third part in a trilogy of episodes, and this just it solidified more for Sisko that he was the emissary as well.
Okay.
But beyond that, like he doesn't keep his wormhole powers, and Bajor started as not part of the Federation and ended as not part of the Federation. So in the world building and grand scheme of things, nothing changed. It's the Last Jedi of Star Trek.
Nice. But unfortunately not a Star Trek episode.
Right. No, this in and of itself helps the DS9 continuity, and it does help the Star Trek wars that happen. But this episode in and of itself is not Star Trek.
And it could have been written to be a Star Trek episode or a proper Star Trek episode show. It's not as though they could. This is the only way to tell this story, this particular story.
Right.
This is it. And they did it. No, there's ways to do this in a interesting way, science fiction way.
In a science fiction way. Again, I feel like this episode was interesting if you care about the characters and if you care about like this kind of storyline. I feel like this was a really well written episode, and it was good TV, but you have to be more invested and you have to care about these kind of things.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Which I guess is not me.
Right.
Well, I didn't like the episode as much as you did, I don't think. I don't know, I felt like it felt like the first act of something. It felt like this should be a side story or something to a main plot line.
I could see that. Well, because it ends with him, with them saying, they will be, I guarantee. It kind of is. It's almost like a prequel to a bigger story,
right?
Or the first act of something. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Last thing, obviously, you caught the Close Encounters of the Third Kind reference.
Was that a reference, or were they just stealing?
Well, he doesn't say this means something, so I'd have to say it's a callback or a reference.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we see what we're watching next?
Yes, please.
The Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 24, Conspiracy. After diverting to a secret meeting with an old friend and some of Starfleet's finest commanders, Captain Picard finds the USS Horatio destroyed.
Oh, I vaguely remember this one.
Kind of sounds familiar to me, too.
Yeah. I actually thought...
I thought it was going to be something different.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the Pegasus.
Yep. But
once you started reading the blurb, I thought it was going to be Pegasus. Before you started reading it, I thought it was going to be... I actually thought it was the Crusher episode.
No, it's much later. This is still Season 1.
Oh, I know.
Season nobody
I know.
likes. By the way, what season have not we watched?
Do you want to know?
I do.
Season 7 of DS9.
Oh.
Yeah. Before that, it was Season 1 of Voyager and Season 1 of Enterprise. But we just recently hit those.
Wow. So soon, I guarantee you the next one will be a Season 7. I guarantee it. The generator will not let us down.
Oh, I know. The generator is trying to get us to burn through DS9 and TNG. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, all right, fine. Here's an Enterprise. Oh, no, wait. Here's the Next Generation. And then here's a DS9. And here's a Next Generation. And here's a Voyager. But here's the DS9. And here's the Next Generation.
Yeah. Ebb and flow. That's how the universe works.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's go watch it.
Okay. I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
As you knew.